to another episode of Showing Up For You. Hey guys, I'm Shon.
I'm Jasmine.
Guys, it's good to see you again. We are feeling good this Monday morning. We love recording and getting to use this platform to express things that we've discussed ourselves and want to share. I think we just always say, like, if this is relatable, great. If it's not, please be entertained by our trials and tribulations.
Facts.
Today we are talking about being born into debt. And that sounds misleading, so let me break it down. Born into debt is something that I've had to come to the conclusion of myself. Like, I've struggled with this because I've always felt like I want to show appreciation to the tribe that raised me. But there are times that I've struggled with the difference between desiring to show that appreciation and feeling obligated to show that appreciation. And that appreciation comes in different forms for all of us. So, for example, there are a lot of cultures that follow certain career paths because of expectations of their parents. There are a lot of cultures that take up certain careers or strive to make a certain amount of money to be able to come back and contribute to their communities, their tribes, their families. And it looks different for all of us. So we just want to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to start off just by saying that I believe that every person, whether we know how to or whether we have the words or process or outwardly process to do so, we want to show appreciation to our parents and our tribe.
Yeah.
I believe that every person would like to show thankfulness for how they were raised. Sometimes we just don't know how to. And sometimes we're thankful for the good and the bad. Yeah. Those two things can exist. Sometimes we're thankful for the struggle. Sometimes we're thankful for the hard times. Sometimes we're thankful that we didn't get everything that we wanted, or we didn't have the cool parents that we thought we wanted. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Sometimes we're thankful for that. And we're thankful for the contribution and investments that our parents made. And I also want to say that I'm wanting to acknowledge that not everyone grew up in the household with their parents. Not everyone grew up in a household that was suitable for them. And some people should have grown up without their parents. Mm-hmm. Some people have had hard lives and learned hard lessons that a lot of positivity might not have come out of. And I want to address that because it's not to say that we all either should have this appreciation for the quote unquote good or bad parent, or that, we all fit in the same bracket. That's not. So I just want to acknowledge that some of us have had tough childhoods.
Yeah.
I'm coming from a place of growing up in what I think was intentional love, but unintentional trauma. I'm coming from a place of, I see that the heart was there, but the follow through might not have been. And so I'm addressing the part of my life that I was able to kind of eat the meat, spit out the bones when it came to how I was raised and what I wanted to add to my parenting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So born into debt to me looks like being born and growing up knowing that you owe something back to your tribe, community, or parents. Knowing that you owe and wanting to give out of appreciation are two different feelings. I've absolutely always felt like I'm going to get rich so that I could buy my parents a house. Like, yes. I think we all have that like dream, that like desire.
Absolutely.
I've always felt like I'm going to accomplish all the things to make them proud. I'm going to accomplish all the things to make them feel like they did their job And the reality is that there are times that I accomplished the things and there was no affirmation, there was no appreciation, there was no positive feedback. There were times that I accomplished the things or even extended or gifted, one of my parents with large things, and it was not received well. It was not very much appreciated. And then, and there were a lot of feelings attached after that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had me thinking that as much as I want to do for my family, as much as I want to like be a millionaire so that I can like retire my parents, right? Um, I started to think of the reality of there are a lot of children that are unintentionally or like sideways like blamed for um their parents being parents, right? Like, okay, like we're trying to break this down and not be
No, you're doing great.
inappropriate. Um, it's you ever hear a parent say, I did all this for my child, I sacrificed all this for my child, and I had to stop my dreams for you. I quit that job for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever heard a parent do that? As much as like it's normalized, and as much as we like hear it a lot, it's not fair.
It's rude.
It's rude because the thing is like we didn't like volunteer as tribute, like, you know what I mean,
I would like to come into this world on
to
this
come
day
here. We
and be
didn't.
here.
We didn't.
No.
And so it's not like we were all in heaven or wherever, we're on the other side, and we were like, hey, like, did they call my name? Like, am I a newborn? Am I a little bit? And so in saying that, I imagine it feels weird
Mm-hmm.
to come into a situation you can't control,
Mm-hmm.
and hear the person say that you owe them something,
right,
because they stopped or because they had to kind of like hold off on life to be a parent.
right.
I hope the fun few minutes was worth it, because I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So we're going to go and talk about that today. We're going to break that down. But Jasmine, how do you feel? Do you feel like this is a topic that you can contribute to and just kind of help the people understand?
Yes.
How crazy of a point I'm making.
Yes, and your point is not crazy. I brought my thumbs up pen today because I'm thumbsing up so much of what you're saying.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice you had it in your hand.
But,
Lord.
I think what I look forward to in this conversation is that you and I grew up in very different households. The way that our dynamic was set up was very different. I come from a household of parents that were never in the same house. And so coming into being born into debt looks very different, but it also, I think when you first brought up this topic to me, we had to like really sit down and like hash out a lot of things, because it was something, if I'm honest, that I never thought about because it was just so embedded in my life. And so like I never was able to necessarily put words to it or put like a definition of like, dang, like I really was born into some type of debt. And for me, it looked like I was born into like being a burden. Like you had just shared, of like, I didn't ask to be here, or like even, parents being like, I had all these dreams and all of these big, things that I did. And, there's one of my parents in my life that I'm like, am I supposed to be grateful that you stopped? Like, am I supposed to tell you, like, thank you so much for putting your life on hold because I got here? And so, you know what I mean? So I'm supposed to give so much back of my life to you. And so I know that that's really been a really challenging wrestle for me, because I'm like, again, I did not ask to be here. I'm grateful to be here, right? Absolutely. Like, I'm so happy. And there's so much that, I got to walk through in my life to really unravel of why is it that I feel like I'm a burden? What is it? Why do I feel like I owe a debt to people in my life? And how is it that I really unlearn those things so that I cannot bring that debt onto others as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, yeah. And I kind of, it kind of goes into like, because you brought up just kind of like, you said bringing the debt onto others. So it's like, depending on, it's almost the response of other people, right? And it kind of makes me think of like the difference between desiring to quote unquote pay that debt and then versus the obligation. So I think naturally we're being taught to be humans, like, you know what I mean, from birth, right? You taught me how to wipe my behind. You're teaching me how to eat with a spoon.
Yes.
You're teaching me how to speak to people. And from then on, we're in this like forever training of how to be an adult. And so it's natural for us to want to show that we can be our best and we can do our best.
Right.
So there goes that desire to pay the debt. There goes that desire to like show that all this hard work that you're spending on me, that you're contributing to my life or investing in me, I'm going to show you like your return. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the desire to pay.
Yeah.
Where it becomes obligation, I think, is where that disappointment starts. That's when you feel obligation, because it's not until I give what I feel is the extent of my giving. It's not until I give my all and it's not received well, or it's not enough, or it's not accepted, that I then feel like, oh my God, like now I have to, like that's not enough. I have to do more. So my motivation changes. Like it's not just, I was affirmed and now like I see I could do more and now I'm motivated to do more. It's like what I did wasn't enough. And, you know, and I think that just to clear this up, like this word where you're using debt, like it looks different. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be honest and speak for Black culture, and majority of us want to leave the home, make some money and come back and feed the community. Meaning we want to buy our mama a house. We want to make sure that we can help pay off debt to the people that helped raise us. We want to make sure that we come back and bring whatever we learned or earned, we come back and give that. Right. There's different cultures. The Asian culture is big on, just from what I know from the people that I know, their tribe mentality is actually pretty amazing, but I can understand how stressful it is. Yeah. Meaning like everybody comes along and supports this one person, right? And you go and you be, you know, whatever that high paying profession is. And once you make it, you now are responsible to support the next upcoming relative. Yeah. And I love it for the tribe mentality, but I can only imagine how it would feel if I can't support the next upcoming the way the tribe supported me. How much
stress and pressure.
How stressful it might be. Right. And so I look at that kind of thing. I look at like there's some cultures where like who you marry matters. Right? That's a debt. You're like, oh, I guess it doesn't matter if I'm in love or not.
Like, that's why arranged marriages are a thing.
Right. And so it looks different for all of us. And let's be clear. I have a lot of like very healthy, loving memories in my household. This doesn't take away from how great my childhood was. Yeah. This is just me picking and choosing what I want to carry on into me being a parent. And, you know, I think you're addressing some things because you are not a parent and we are not even going to address that yet. But you can have a very healthy household and also realize that there are some pressures that you're not able to pinpoint. And it just might look like, I think I owe something that I don't know I owe, or I'm not what my parents expected, or I'm not doing the things that I should have done, or the way they wanted me to do it. Yeah. So it looks different. But anyway, at what point do you feel like you realized you were making that difference of, I want to give back to my family and I want to be who they want me to be, versus like maybe a situation happened and you were like, okay, now I feel obligated to be something I can't be?
Yeah. I would say for me, I think that what I noticed about like what I mean, there's like different debt of what it looks like for me, but I think like a very pinpoint moment for me was I felt like so indebted like with my time. Like I had to give so much of my time to my tribe that I actually did not have. And so, when I was in probably like my senior in high school going into college as well, I talk a lot about those years, but those are very transformative or like aha moment kind of years for me. And I realized our tribe is very tight. Like we do things, we do them together, and it's not just like our immediate family, but we also do it with extended family. And so, and I know that that's not everybody's, story, but that's just what my context looked like. And there are moments of like me being in college and like breaking my back to make it home for certain things. I did not have that time to give, but I felt like because, I'm the oldest kid, I'm the oldest, cousin, all the things. It's like I felt this pressure that because I'm the first, I had to pave this way, and I constantly had to give my time to be like I don't know, just like this presence. So I felt like I had to give everybody my time because everybody stopped their lives for me. Because I was the first grandkid, because I was the first, daughter, cousin, whatever, like because everybody else did things for me, I felt that I had to give so much of my time in a moment of my life to where I didn't have to give it. I was learning who I was. I was, taking the time to learn about, moments in my life, how to even navigate my time. I was like, I don't know what to do here. Right. But because I felt like there's so much pressure on myself, like everybody's lives kind of stood still and they came together for me. Therefore, now that I'm at an age where I need to stay still and bring my time for everybody else.
Who made that clear to you? Like, where do you think that happened? Like, not who, because I think it could be a collective, like, there could be collective things, like, right? But like, when do you think you realized I have to go back home? Because you live your college is 3 hours from here. And I mean, as much as I loved making the trip, I can only imagine, how frequent you had to do that, But like, I guess at what point were you like, this, like, here's the return. Like, I have to. Who was cheering that on? Who was not who? I guess I'm like, what was putting that on you? Because I think we all have this like idea of, are they just happy to see me and so I think that I have to keep doing it? Or is it like, are you coming down? Do you need to come down to, are you coming down for Easter? Are you coming down for this? Are you coming down for Christmas? That kind of pressure is like, where I am, how long it takes to get here, that I have finals, that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm asking, like, was that an indirect pressure point?
Yes, it was definitely an indirect pressure point, and this is why I think why it's that way. I have always naturally been a fairly responsible person. Yeah. I feel like I make good choices, all throughout my life. And so I think that because my family and people in my life knew, they indirectly was like, well, she'll just make it happen.
Okay. That makes sense.
Know,
okay.
Is that answering your question a little bit?
It is. See, that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, she's, when I was again, like we're both very family oriented. This is like a big deal for us. And so because throughout my life, because I came in feeling, there was moments I felt like a burden, I was like, let me show the people I am responsible. I am, I'm worthy, I guess you could say, in a way of like being here. So let me show you that. So all throughout, my childhood, that was a presence, I guess you could say, that I continued to try to bring. So then having that moment of allowing people to know, like, Jazz is responsible, she'll take care of her business, and she'll show up. Therefore, indirectly, it's like, okay, so you got time?
Yeah.
Or it's not even
Okay.
you got time. You're going to make time. That's
okay.
the thing.
There it
is that you're going to end up making time regardless. But then that led into so many moments of there's a lot of things that I did not share about my life with my family because I'm like, well, that's going to become a burden onto you. So I don't want to bring that to you. Or even, you know, not being, you know, honest about certain things that were happening in my life and knowing that like this is going to break my back if I end up coming, but I'm not going to allow you to know that because I, you know, without even knowing it, I felt indebted to comply to certain demands, you know, and instead of like genuinely wanting to be there, I had this like false guilt, I guess you could say, or like a duty to be there and be present.
Okay. So that's okay. I'm glad you cleared that up because I was trying to understand like what, because I had to break this down for myself. It's like there are some times we put this guilt on ourselves. Like we do it, we trigger it, and we think that because we feel guilty for like wasting somebody's time or like that we've like ruined our chances to do what we were supposed to do for our parents or family or in our lives, we put this guilt on ourselves. And I had to differentiate what that meant. And so when I ask you like what made you think you had to do that, there are times that I've like pieced this apart even as we were like getting ready for this, and I was like, Shon, nobody asked you to do that thing. So you can't blame anybody.
You put that on yourself. Yeah.
Right. And so there are some things that I did that I like tried to overachieve that nobody expected of me.
Yeah.
Which leads to expectations, like, you know, that I think you kind of like vaguely said is like, she's gonna make it work. And now they're having these expectations of you, and because of your intimidation by what they expect you to do, knowing your circumstances and knowing your situation, you're like, I'm not going to tell you anything else that's holding me back from doing the thing because I don't like, I'm insecure about that. I don't even want to share the things because then that would, you know, I don't know if you were afraid of like judgment, if you were afraid of like disappointing someone. Now that I think about it, it's like that honesty could have created a point of, I can't keep coming to, you know, maybe I'll make 2 holidays out of the year instead of all of them, you know, or maybe you guys meet me halfway, or, you know what I mean? That communication could have helped, but we're realizing as we're piecing it apart, there are things that nobody asked you to do. Like there are things that nobody.
For sure. And I've been in those situations too, for sure.
But then there are things that you're like, I've told you how hard this is for me, and you're still like, you know what I mean? And so I had to differentiate that. That's why I was asking. And it leads to failed expectations.
Boom.
Right?
Yep.
Failed expectations in the subject of, you know, feeling like you're indebted to your tribe, your family, your parents. For me, looks like, you know, we want you to go to a good school. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. Whether it's a way you date, whether it's a way that you know, start your career, whether it's the way you go to school, whatever that looks like, right? Whether it's a religious expectation.
True.
Right? You know,
that's true.
I remember I carried myself personally based off of religion. And that was just my base, my sole reason is like, because the Bible said.
Right.
Because my family said the Bible said, and this is what I was raised. My family was totally church-based. My grandfather owned a church that now my uncle preaches at. My other uncle owns a church. Grew up in the church singing. Like we were in church every day of the week. Right. So like
we was there.
That is just something that I lived by. And so when I talk about failed expectations, I look at there were things that were obvious and blatantly expressed what you will do. Then when you can't accomplish or complete those things, and you know, depending on the response you get. So for me, this is something I struggle with. I honestly like struggle with my mom didn't really respond positively to a lot of milestones in my life. And I know, like, if you look at my rap sheet, like, I was like, I did everything the right way. And so every time, like, there were a lot of times that I accomplished these big milestones,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a response of like, either it's not enough, or somehow I didn't do it right because I didn't acknowledge her in a way that I felt like she didn't need to necessarily be acknowledged.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it made me very insecure. And had I been a smaller person, a smaller minded person, I'll be honest, because I really thank God that I had other people in my life that lifted me up on this. But had I been a more insecure, like, and just challenged person, just because you guys, I totally believe in therapy. But had I not had the tribe, the people that I had outside of that tribe behind me, I know that I would have been broken. Mm. But I remember the responses that I got. I'll be honest, like I remember when I got engaged. And my mom was the first one I called.
Yeah.
And I literally like ran to the bathroom and like called her, like super happy. I can't, like, this is just ridiculous. And her response was one of pretty much why didn't she get included in it? Why didn't it go through her? Mm-hmm. And why wasn't it about, like, it was like this inclusion of her. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just happy it's happening, right?
I just accepted the ring.
I was like, I just said, yeah. But it was like, she couldn't be happy for me in that moment. And when I look at how my husband proposed and how it all happened, there would have been no way for my mom to be involved and for it to be as amazing as it was. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at that kind of thing, a lot of milestones in my life happened like that. And so what that did is discouraged me to like accomplish more for the sake of making her proud. Mm-hmm. And B, like I withheld information.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm scared to bring you along or make you apart because it sounds like I'm going to disappoint you.
Right.
And I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared to disappoint you. Mm-hmm. And I'm also scared to, and I'm kind of embarrassed or scared to make you a part of it. And your reaction, because of the way you react to something, mm-hmm. would allow other people to see the disappointment that I am in you.
Yeah.
And there were times I couldn't help it. I mean, my wedding was another situation. You were there.
Sure was.
And, her response and the things that happened there was no way I was not going to involve, my mom in that.
Yeah.
But I just remember having to fully prepare for feeling like I am not enough. Mm-hmm. And so I can only imagine the things that, other people or other children go through when they choose a different career path than their parents want them to, or they choose a different mate than their parents want them to.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
So, failed expectations. Do you have an idea like of how those insecurities like affect your accomplishments or even your attempt to accomplish other things? Like, does that hit you?
Yeah.
As hard as it like punches me?
Absolutely. I'm like, everything with failed expectations, I'm like, you know what? The thing is, there's so much of what you just said that resonates so much. Something that I did want to, point out is that you saying of, I'm not wanting to like include you in my accomplishments, right? I know for me, same playing field, might be opposite end, so walk me through this, please.
Okay.
But it literally makes me sick saying it. My dad, there's so many accomplished moments that he gets the end of it, but it's never good enough in the process of it.
What does that mean?
Meaning like
the end result?
the
of the
result.
accomplishments?
Yeah. So pretty much. So I'll give you one instance. When I was in high school, I just got to a moment in my life where I was like, I'm just gonna be defiant. I think a lot of people go through that. And at some point, I had said to him, you know, track and field is not going to get me through like the rest of my life.
Okay.
Essentially. And this is like that alone within our relationship has always felt like a burden because it was something close to his heart, and you know, it was something that I could never live up to his expectations in that realm. And so I said that to him, and then he proceeded to, I got a scholarship to college through track, and he said to me, he pretty much gave me an "I told you so" response of, remember that time that you told me track wasn't going to get you to school? Look what it did now. And it was a moment that I'm like, we should be celebrating this. It should be great. It should be fantastic. But it was my process to getting to that point. I was always going to fail you. I was, you know, the way that I got there, it was never going to be the way that you wanted or you wanted to see. And so then you get to, one, throw it in my face at the end, but then you also get to, not that you get to, you claimed that this is my accomplishment as well. And I've had a lot of other moments, you know, in my life where so many things have been like they've claimed the end of it rather than the process of it. And the thing is like, you know, you were talking about like an insecurity of, you know, going through that. And I know that I have been so insecure about sharing things in my life because there's been ways that people have given me like, I think this is how you should do it. This is the, you know, the way that you should walk through it. And I'm like, and I've gotten to the point where I've told people I will never be able to live up to that.
Wow.
Never. And I think that's a really hard place to come through. And that's not something that happened overnight, you know, for me. And I really want to disclaim that. But I think that as I've looked through, you know, certain moments in my life of feeling like, the thing is, so many of my accomplishments, I think I'm an overachiever because I want to make people proud because I feel so indebted. So like there's some people who don't even want to take the attempt. I almost over attempt and might end up actually failing.
That is crazy.
It's absolute, like literally as we were preparing for this topic, I was like, I hate it here. I hate we both do this. You know what I mean? And then it's like my life crashes and I feel like I'm in shambles constantly. But you know, I make these big attempts or I want to accomplish so much, but I know that on the other end there's certain, like, you know, I was like, I'm done with track and field because I was like, I'm going to fail you every single time and I will never make you proud the way that you claim that you're so proud of me.
Oh my God. Okay, that is, I hate that I relate. Because like something I found myself saying over and over again when we were preparing for this was that there are a lot of attempts of appreciation that were rejected. And that only strengthened my insecurity in future contributions. And so what those future contributions look like for me, and I mean, like I've graduated, I've married, I've had the kids, I've done the things, I've had the great career, and then I'm continuing and, you know, different things in my career. So now for me, it's like, I'm in the mode of, I want to give back. Right. Like there are things that I do for my parents, separately, financially, that I feel like I want you to show, I want to show you that I have your interests at heart when it comes to like, I know what you like to do and I'm not rich, but I'm in a place where like, I want to show my appreciation. You have time, you know what I mean? And so there's a special thing, like my dad loves the Playboy Jazz Festival. Well, it's now called the Hollywood Jazz Festival. And so one of our traditions is like his Father's Day / birthday is that I, you know, for the past few, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but like that's your gift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's things like throughout that I'm like, I can do them for you now because I'm an adult and I want to show you my appreciation.
Right.
And then on the side of, my mom, I actually, like, I'm not gonna lie, my dad knows this. I want to give her so much more than I want to give him.
Yeah.
Because I know she's done, like, she was more present.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what I find in those situations is like every like huge gift, every huge trip, every like attempt at like I'm gonna take care of you.
Yeah.
It's welcomed with a like entitlement, and it scares me because I'm like, if this isn't enough, like I'm scared because like I'm not where I financially want to be. I haven't made it. You know what I mean? I haven't like
what's gonna
retired.
Happen when I really...
What happens? Like, is it gonna be? And so it scares me because I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not enough. Like I said, it's just a feeling of that. And so when we talk about this, I wonder how you all relate. I wonder how this is all like connecting, because it looks different for everybody. Right. It looks different, for me and Jasmine in accomplishments. It looks different in our performance as children and then adults.
Mm-hmm.
For some, like I said, it looks different in their careers. It looks different there's a lot of high school kids that are like, doing sports and, I don't, maybe they have the same struggle you had, right? And
or even academic accomplishments.
Exactly. So, it looks different for everybody. We're only, and we'd actually love your feedback on what that looks like for you. That you may have experienced some kind of like quote unquote debt that you feel, like for a lot of people, it's their obligation to their younger siblings.
Yeah.
Right. Or the influence on the younger siblings. I've seen a lot of situations where like the older sibling is held responsible for the image that they hold up because the younger person is watching. The younger sibling is watching.
Yeah.
So now I can't experience or experience life or like go after life the way I want to.
Right.
Because it looks like I'm rambunctious or irresponsible to the younger. So it doesn't have to look like finances. It doesn't have to look like credentials. It doesn't have to look like sports. It could look like your influence. So we look forward to your feedback on that. I'm actually going to switch gears and ask you, I might just want to put you on the spot.
All right.
When we talk about this kind of stuff, I always want to acknowledge the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Have you taken the time, and this was hard for me, so you could very well, like pass the mic back, but have you taken the time to find out what you understand about why your parents or your tribe portrayed dissatisfaction, or in some cases, like a sense of entitlement? Like, have you taken the time to like ask yourself, well, why does my dad do that? Or why does my mom do that? Because you have spoken about just you being the oldest and, you have a younger sister that you are the influencer of.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And so, as much as it's an honor to be the influencer, have you ever stopped to ask, okay, why does my mother feel that's a responsibility of mine? Or why does my father feel, right?
Putting this on me. Yeah.
I'm just saying, they're human.
Like,
they had to learn it somewhere.
They definitely
okay, so
did.
I'm just trying to get...
And there's still like, there's so much, it's so crazy. I actually hope that everybody gets to the point in their life where they're like, I want to dissect everybody in my core and immediate circle, because it helps give so much understanding to your life and helps you give so much grace to certain places in your life where you're like, I have resentment, I have achiness in my heart, whatever. For my mom, you just mentioned about like, I'm the oldest, I look, after my sister, my younger sister. And I had to realize that my mom is also the oldest sibling. And my mom, she had to carry herself in a particular way as well.
Okay.
Because she had, other siblings who were looking to her.
Okay.
So I think that that's something that, whether it was conscious, subconscious, that was something that was put onto me, that I, ultimately took upon. But I also know that there are other things that I noticed with my mom, that she had to make a lot of sacrifices in her life to show up and to be present for her family. Whether it was right or wrong, that was just her reality. And so knowing that that was her reality, of course she's probably going to take that into her parenting, and she's going to bring that onto me as well. Yeah. Right? And so I think that was a really big thing. I also had to look at my mom's relationship and dynamic with her parents. Like my grandfather, he passed away, and so my mom didn't have a dad in her life for a long time. And so there's certain ways that, because she raised me, she was the one who was, present for me majority of my life. And so it's like we had this like hyper, like as women, we show up for each other. And that was something that was brought on to me. And so just realizing like, what are the dynamics within her life when I wasn't around helped give me a lot of like, okay, this makes sense. Yeah. Whether it's right or wrong, or
whether she intentionally did it to leave that kind of impact.
Right. I can acknowledge it and be like, I can see where this came from, and maybe it was fine for you. I just don't really care for it. With my dad, I had to see his family context. It was really complicated. It was really messy. And therefore I'm like, I probably was put at these ridiculous standards because maybe he didn't want me to be messy or me to be complicated. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I can draw certain conclusions because I'm like, I saw the relationship that my dad never had a relationship with his dad. My dad had a stepdad, so he had to navigate that. I see the relationship that he has with my grandmother. They're two peas in a pod. And the thing is, they ride or die for each other. And they're probably not going to ride or die for me. That's fine. There's just certain things that I'm like, I had to come to this conclusion, for myself, because I'm like, if I don't take the time to understand the people who heavily have influenced me, I'm never going to be able to actually process my own things.
Yep. That's it. Yeah. That concludes. I'm just kidding. Because that is it. That is something that I always, and Jasmine will tell you, I always talk about is we can talk about all the things that we struggle with and that could be considered trauma or toxicity, but it's important to look at, okay, why would this person put this on me, or why would this environment be created, right? And so I always like to go there for myself, and I'm just gonna speak for actually like myself and my husband, because we do share a family that way. One thing that I did have to learn is that on my husband's side, the elders are still in this place of it is your job to carry the relationship as like the younger people. So there's not a lot of effort made from the grandparents, or for me, it's like my in-laws. They expect for you to report to them, and that is the extent of the relationship. And at first I was like, oh my goodness, like if we don't reach out. And the thing is, when we do reach out, they love it. It's amazing. But it's very rare that we're being reached out to. And no matter how much we acknowledge that, hey, like, we are busy too, a lot is going on. There's not much of initiation when it comes to reaching out. Right. And what I notice about that is a lot of older generations see that as a sign of respect, meaning you come to me. And that's how they view respect. You come to me. I am the adult. I don't come to you. I don't come down to you. You come up to me. And that is just the way it was. And so understanding that helped me understand a lot of things about my husband and his parents. Like, my husband is a savage. Let me just say, facts. My husband is like, he's not, I guess, like, he's not a big he's not going to match the effort, the potential effort. He's going to match your energy.
Boom.
And I'm very family oriented, and my husband's like, I'm right, I'm here, you know.
So we got a family
right, he's more so like, you need to respect my space, and I'm not going to be something I'm not, and I'm not gonna follow any rules that don't contribute to us both. You know what I mean? And so I'm the one that's like trying to initiate the family time, and he's over here like, if they don't want to talk, I don't want to talk.
Right.
So I laugh because that's how different we are. But I understand why his parents are that way. For me, for like my mom, what has kept me, I would say, sane is understanding that there were a lot of traditions when she was growing up. So why wouldn't she expect the same of her daughters? My grandmother, my mom's mom, had 9 kids. And the women, the sisters had obligations, and the brothers had obligations. And that's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And that worked for them because of how large of a household they had.
Yeah.
Right? I remember my mom telling me stories of, my grandmother, because she was a pastor's wife. She would like call or communicate to the sisters and the brothers, all 9 of them. And she would say something like, this is the dress that I want for Resurrection Sunday. And they would all be able to chip in and contribute this gift. You get what I'm saying?
Wow.
And that was just the way that they loved on her. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That was the way they did it. Now, my mom only has 4 girls. And not all of us, like my baby sister, was not during this time, like was not a financially contributing factor in this, right? She would just put her name on the gifts. So it would be like between the 3 of us, our older, the older ones, my mom would be like, this is what I want. And it didn't look the same because I'm a broke college student, first of all.
Well, I still don't have money yet.
You know what I mean? And so I would be like, I can't contribute to this.
No.
And I just remember there was a time that I told my 2 other sisters, I was like, I'm broke and I cannot, contribute to this Michael Kors pea coat that mom wants. I can't. And they were like, how dare you? You know what I mean? Because that was the expectation, and that was what you did. And so I understand why. And I don't blame anyone for that, because sometimes we learn things and we do things based off of what worked for our past. Yeah. What worked for our families. And so, like I said, having to understand that makes me communicate differently in these situations. Makes me understand why it's so important and there's so much pressure. Yeah. And I think about, you talked about with your dad. Your dad is really good when it comes to track. That is one thing I will never take away from him. Yeah. And there may be, currently or in the past, issues of communication, of, mistreatment, of disrespect, but track is all he has. Yeah. And so when I think about the way that he communicates to you, that's all he has. Right. And that's why it holds such a huge weight. Yeah. And definitely, I don't know that he's considering that it's so much pressure on you, but that's all he knows. And so we have to understand that sometimes this is all our parents know. Right. This is all our tribes know.
It's almost like thinking about what's the commonality between the 2 of you that's like, this is the end all be all for us, but it's like, sadly, that's not the end all be all for my life.
Right. Yeah. And, and in addition to that, like, we have to understand, like, our parents weren't the ones, like, pro-therapy. They weren't the ones outwardly processing. They didn't have the courage or the desire to stand up against their parents and say, I'm not going to marry the person you want me to. I'm not going to follow the religion you want me to follow. I'm not going to go to their career. They didn't desire to push back. Yeah. And they might have not had the encouragement to do so. Yeah.
Because I often think about their environment, right? Like, not, this might be a steep thing to say, but I'm just going to say it.
Say it.
Like,
this is a safe space.
Thank you. I think that our parents lived in a conforming type society. I would say that's not applicable now. The way that we make friends now, the way that, or whoever is in our circle of influence, we are more open to having conversations with people who are willing to challenge what we think and what our thoughts are, rather than let me, whoever's in my environment, let me conform to what's collectively being said. And so it was more of a collective type of conversation rather than two individuals collectively coming together to have a conversation and meeting where they are.
Yeah.
So that's something. There's also something I just thought about. Was that with that generation, I won't say generation, I think that everybody has this, I guess you could say, is that so many people, whether they're conscious or they consciously know it or subconsciously know it, they often will hold you to a standard that they never lived up to. Yet they're more willing to hold you accountable to live up to that rather than holding themselves accountable, saying that I actually failed in this way.
I think there's a reason for that. I think that, wait, did I cut you off?
No,
Were you about to say something
please.
else? I think that a lot of times our parents or the tribe before us didn't have the room or resources to do so, which is not our fault.
Right.
But it's true. You think about it, we have the internet at our fingertips. Literally. I could walk past an office right now and apply for the job on my phone. Yeah. And get an interview immediately almost, right? There was once upon a time where you had to go into an establishment, get a paper application, go home, fill it out, and then come back and turn it in to that location and go in for the interview. You know what I mean? And so there are different resources that they did not have.
So true.
And so when you look at that environment, I think you're speaking of just the things that they're holding us accountable for that they didn't accomplish themselves. I'd like to think it was harder. But I also think there's this false view where they also think that it's so much easier, even though we have the resources. That doesn't mean we're getting all the yeses that you didn't get. Boom. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that. I look at buying a house. Okay, anybody will tell you can have all the finances you need, all the money, you can have it to buy a house. Sometimes it's not just the money. It's the availability. It's the outbidding. It's the coding. It's the, you know what I mean? That was one of our biggest problems, when we were buying our house. It was being outbid, different stages of the house buying process, what looked better, what didn't look good, the availability, the area, so many other things. Back in the day, they were buying houses for dirt cheap.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so you're you could own your house. And guess what? They could also live very well off of one income. Right. You know what I mean? What was it? Dad went to work and mom stayed home and took care of all 50 million kids. Not today. It's y'all both got to do something.
Right. Yep.
Or we have to be more intentional about how many kids we gonna have, because it's a lot.
That's
right?
a whole conversation.
So when I look at that, I look at, to them, it might look like you guys have it easier. But we're looking at inflation. We're looking at how different schooling is right now. We're looking at we're in it.
Yeah.
But they lived a life where it was more difficult or it wasn't as accessible.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times it looks like, you should have been done that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And a lot of it comes from them not being able to do it. Therefore, you should have the room to do it faster. You should do it. You know what I mean?
It's almost like it becomes a non-negotiable.
Right. And let's circle right back. A lot of parents are I had to take care of you. That's why I couldn't do the dream. That's why I couldn't do the thing. And so now you feel guilty because you're oh man, if I wasn't born, you might have been a superstar by now, or you might have been at the top of your, firm.
Right.
And you feel guilty for that when in reality, like I said, we didn't ask.
No. And I mean, maybe this is me just being dark. I'm just going to take it there.
Right.
But I think about, like, there are some people, I have a cousin who's had to take in some of her family members without a choice. She didn't ask for that. She didn't ask to be here. She didn't ask for this. But you put on her that she had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And that's uncomfortable.
Yes.
But you say yes because what?
You're born into that.
You're born into that because you're like,
mm-hmm.
why wouldn't I? This is my family, or why? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or you assume that the same would be done for you.
Yeah.
And so it affects the choices you make.
Mm-hmm. Because she could have been leaving. Like, what if she doesn't get to live up to her dream? Is it going to be fair for her to say the same thing that you? Anyways.
No, I respect where you were going to go with this.
I was like, let me not be too dark. Let me ease
that wasn't dark though. That was real. That was absolutely real. And I have to acknowledge that, you know, my husband and I, our biggest thing is not to make our kids feel like it's their fault for being here. It's literally so it. Like we talk about this every day. Mm-hmm. We never want to imply that anything that our kids do has to please us.
Yeah.
Our whole job is to raise you to be an exceptional citizen. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If my son wants to, whatever career he wants to take up, that's you. My job is to make sure that you can financially, you have the knowledge and the backup plan to be financially stable to take that risk. Right. I want to be able to do all the things. And that's why we believe in multiple streams of income. Mm-hmm. That's why me and my husband wear so many hats. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we totally believe that nothing that you do is gonna is a disappointment or a upset to us.
Yeah.
And we never have, you know, spoken to them in a sense of, you know, you have to do this because I had you. You know, this was our choice.
Yeah.
And I almost like really love that they're getting to see this third pregnancy because we're clear about mommy and daddy wanted this. Yeah. And mommy and daddy, whether, you know, a lot of people are like, it was an accident, it was a slip up. First of all, I truly believe if you're not preventing, you're planning. I'm going to just be honest. That's just me. And so when I look at having kids, I look at this is a choice we made. And whether this is a great time or not, mm-hmm. my responsibility is you. Yeah. So I will never express to my kids or never make them feel like my life had to stop because of them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so that's something we choose not to bring into. And even on a later note, my kids will not have to, let me just say this. We are doing things now, my husband and I, and have been doing things for the past few years to make sure that my kids don't have to feel like they need to take care of us when we're older. Mm. Put me and my husband, I'm gonna find a good home. Listen, there are people that we can pay to take service. You know what I mean? If my kids feel like they want me around because of grandkids, I completely love it. Yeah. But I want my kids to have the option to live their life. God forbid something happens to us. Yeah. So when I look at, there are families that are obligated to take in, you know, other family members for mm-hmm. whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I love that for you guys. I'm just saying that my kids will have the option. Yeah. You know, if my daughter is like a thriving artist and I somehow come up with it, you know, I have a disease now and I'm due. Yeah. I want her to, she could visit me at the home, you know what I mean?
And tell her people my mommy is taken care of.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. I want that for her. So we lead our parenting lives based off of them feeling like them being here is an opportunity, not an obligation. Yeah. Not to be our ticket out, you know, when they make it in the big leagues. Right. Like, you know.
Like, go make it in the big leagues and spend all that money that you made on you. And enjoy that.
I'm good.
Yeah. I think, you know, thinking about this, I'm not a parent, as we all know, but I think that I kind of had this thought that came into my head that whenever I have, you know, a child one day, a son or a daughter, God willing, is that what if I thought about the standards that my children put on me, and what about me living up to those standards? To being the best mom that I can be, to being, you know what I mean, exceptional in their lives, to being a great example for them. It's like, instead of putting standards on my kids, what would it look like if my kids put standards on me, and would I live up to that?
because that's your job.
Boom.
To show up for them.
Yeah. So
I think that's an amazing thought. And like we said before, guys, we look forward to hearing your opinion on this. Like I said, you could definitely be in the most healthy of households and still have those feelings. And none of this is to bash or bring negative attention to any of your or our childhood. It's just there are things that we carry on from our childhood or being raised that we choose not to take on to our children or even our lifestyles now. So we look forward to hearing from you. Leave a comment, subscribe, tell us your thoughts.
Share with a friend.
Share with a friend.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody that supports us. And we really are just loving the growth of the audience in this awesome podcast.
This has been great. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.